The Galactic Assembly Hall was the largest structure ever built by living beings. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a massive sphere of crystal and metal that could hold representatives from 1,000 different species. Today, every seat was filled. Ambassador Una Park stood near the back of the human section. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. At 53 years old, she had spent 30 years in diplomatic service. She had seen many things, but she had never seen anything quite like this. The Volrath Supreme Commander stood at the center of the hall. He was 12 feet tall, his body made of something that looked like living black glass. When he moved, light reflected off his surface in strange patterns. His voice was deep and cold, and it echoed through the entire chamber. The Velrith Dominion has conquered 47 star systems, he announced. We have destroyed 17 civilizations that stood against us. We have never lost a war. We have never known defeat. Una listened quietly. Beside her, a young officer named Taiho Kim was taking notes on a small device. He was only 28, new to the diplomatic corps, and his hands were shaking slightly. Do not be afraid, Una whispered to him. Watch and learn. The Supreme Commander continued his speech. He listed humanity's crimes against the Dominion. Humans had refused to pay tribute. Humans had given shelter to refugees from conquered worlds. Humans had ignored official warnings. And worst of all, humans had shown disrespect. Your species treats us with contempt, the commander said. This is unacceptable. The Valrath Dominion demands the immediate surrender of the Sol System. All human military forces will be disbanded. All human technology will be handed over to us. Your leaders will come before the Dominion Council and beg for mercy. The hall was silent. Every alien species watched the humans, expecting fear. The Valrath had never made such demands without following through. Everyone knew what happened to species that refused. If you do not accept these terms, the commander finished, then we will come to your world. We will burn your cities. We will destroy your fleets. We will end your civilization. You have one standard day to respond. He stepped back from the speaking platform. The silence continued. Then Una Park raised her hand. The human delegation wishes to respond now, she said. Her voice was calm and clear. The commander turned his massive head toward her. You need no time to consider?
You're welcome.
No. Murmurs spread through the assembly. This was unusual. Most species begged for more time when facing the Velrith. They tried to negotiate. They offered compromises. They did not respond immediately. Una walked forward to the speaking platform. She was small compared to the massive aliens around her, but she moved with complete confidence. Taiho watched her go, his heart beating fast. She stood at the platform and looked up at the Supreme Commander. You want war with humanity? She asked.
Let me hide.
We want your surrender,
Okay.
the commander corrected. Una smiled. It was a strange smile, calm and almost friendly. Those are not the same thing.
Oh shit.
You cannot have our surrender. But if you want war, then you may have that instead. The commander's crystalline body flickered with what might have been confusion. You accept our declaration of war? Yes. Another pause.
KFC, bro.
Then the commander laughed. It was a horrible sound, like glass breaking. Your species is very small. Your territory is very limited. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. You cannot possibly win against the Velrith Dominion. Una's smile did not change. Perhaps. Then why do you choose war? Una looked around the assembly hall. Thousands of aliens were watching her. Many of them came from species that the Velrith had conquered. She could see fear in their eyes, but also something else. Something like hope. Because some things are worth fighting for, she said. And some things are worth dying for. Humanity has been fighting and dying for causes since before we left our homeworld. We are very good at it. She turned back to the commander. You think your size and your technology will save you. You think your numbers will crush us. But you do not understand what you are dealing with. And what are we dealing with? The commander asked. Yuna's eyes were cold now. You are dealing with a species that has spent 10,000 years killing itself. We have invented more ways to hurt, destroy, and murder than any species in this galaxy. We have fought wars over land, over resources, over ideas, over nothing at all. We have survived ice ages, plagues, famines, and ourselves. We are still here. She pointed at the commander. You want to be our enemy? Very well. But understand this, we do not know how to surrender. We never learned. When we fight until we win or until we die. There is no other option for us. The commander was silent for a long moment. Then he said, Your species is insane. Yes, Yuna agreed. We probably are. That should worry you. She walked back to her seat. Taiho was staring at her with wide eyes. The entire assembly was in shock. What happens now? Taiho whispered. Now? Yuna sat down calmly. Now we fight. Far away, on Earth's orbital command station, Admiral Subincho received the transmission. She was a tall woman with short black hair and sharp eyes. She had commanded fleets for 20 years. She had never lost a battle. Her war council was assembled around a large table. Captain Ji Wuhan stood nearby, waiting for orders. The Vorath have declared war, Subin said. Ambassador Park has accepted. Should we be worried? Jiwoo asked. Subin laughed. It was not a pleasant laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had been waiting for this moment. Worried? No. She turned to face her officers. The Vorath think they understand war. They think conquest is war. They are wrong. They have never faced an enemy that fights the way we fight. They have never faced an enemy that refuses to stop. She pressed a button on the table. A holographic display appeared, showing the positions of every human fleet in the galaxy. Begin Operation Sleeping Giant, she ordered. All fleets to battle positions. All reserves to be activated. Contact every resistance cell in Vorath territory. Tell them the time has come. Jiwoo nodded. And if the Vorath attack before we are ready? Subin smiled. It was the same smile Yuna had worn in the assembly hall. Then they will learn what humans do when we are surprised. They will learn about desperation. They will learn about spite. They will learn that we are most dangerous when we are cornered. She looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vorath were preparing their fleets. They were confident. They were certain of victory. They had no idea what was coming. Send a message to all human colonies, Subin said. Tell them to prepare. Tell them to hold nothing back. Tell them that today, we remind the galaxy why they should have left us alone. The message went out at the speed of light, spreading across human space. On 100 different worlds, soldiers checked their weapons. Engineers prepared their ships. Scientists activated secret projects that have been waiting for this moment. And in the darkness between stars, humanity prepared for war. The Vorath thought they were hunting prey. They did not realize they had awakened a predator. They did not understand that some creatures are most dangerous when threatened. They would learn. They would all learn. The war had begun. 3 weeks after the declaration of war, the Vorath came to New Bizin. New Bizin was a small colony on the outer edge of human space. It had only 50,000 residents, mostly farmers and miners. Its orbital defenses were minimal. The Vorath commanders chose it as their first target because it seemed easy. They sent 200 warships. They carried 500,000 ground troops. They expected to crush the colony within hours. They were wrong. Sergeant Dongwook Lee watched the enemy fleet appear in the sky. He was 52 years old, with gray hair and a face full of scars. He had fought in the Martian insurrection 20 years ago. He had seen things that would break most men. But he was not broken. He was patient. "Sir, the Vorath are beginning orbital bombardment," reported a young soldier beside him. "Should we evacuate the civilians?" Dongwook shook his head slowly. "The civilians are already underground. They have been underground for 2 days. 2 days? But the Vorath only arrived now." "Yes," Dongwook smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "We knew they were coming. We had time to prepare." The bombardment lasted for 6 hours. The Vorath ships fired beams of energy that melted buildings and turned streets to glass. From orbit, it looked like complete destruction. But underneath the surface, 50,000 humans waited in bunkers. These bunkers were not built recently. Humans had been building underground shelters for centuries, ever since they learned that enemies liked to drop things from the sky. The bunkers of New Bizon could survive nuclear weapons. Vorath energy beams were nothing compared to nuclear weapons. When the bombardment stopped, the Vorath troops began to land. Their dropships descended through the smoke and ash. 500,000 soldiers spread across the ruined city. They found nothing. The streets were empty. The buildings were shells of melted metal and broken glass. No bodies, no survivors, no resistance. The Vorath commander, a creature named Threll, watched from his flagship. He was confused. "Where are the humans?" he demanded. "We are scanning for life signs," his officer reported. "But we detect nothing on the surface." Then they fled. Cowards. Threll ordered his troops to secure the colony. They moved through the ruins in careful formations, searching every structure. They were confident. They were trained. They were completely unprepared for what came next. The first explosion killed 30 soldiers. It came from beneath the street. A mine buried deep underground, triggered by pressure sensors. The Vorath had walked right over it without knowing it was there. Before they could react, a second explosion hit them from behind. Then a third. Then a fourth. Sergeant Dongwook watched through a camera hidden in the rubble. He was smiling. "Now," he said into his radio. "Phase 2. From the ruins around the Vorath, humans began to appear. They did not stand in the open. They did not form lines. They shot from windows, from holes in the ground, from piles of debris. They fired once, twice, then vanished before the Vorath could return fire. The Vorath soldiers had never seen anything like this. In their wars, enemies fought openly. Armies faced each other on battlefields. There were rules. There was honor. Humans did not care about rules. Humans did not care about honor. Humans cared only about winning. Within the first hour, the Vorath lost 10,000 troops. They had not killed a single human. Threll ordered more soldiers to the surface. They came in waves, filling the streets with their crystalline bodies. They thought that numbers would solve the problem. They were wrong again. The humans had prepared traps everywhere. Buildings collapsed on squads of soldiers. Poison gas flooded underground passages that the Vorath tried to use for cover. Snipers killed officers from distances so great that the Vorath could not even see where the shots came from. And then there was the fire. Humans had learned about fire millions of years ago. They had loved it ever since. They used it to cook their food, to warm their homes, and to destroy their enemies. The weapons they brought to New Bizon used fire in ways the Vorath had never imagined. Burning liquid stuck to crystalline bodies and would not stop burning. Explosives created heat so intense that the Vorath literally shattered. Smoke filled the air, blinding their sensors and choking their troops. By the end of the first day, the Vorath had lost 50,000 soldiers. They controlled only small pockets of the city, and they still had not captured a single human. On the second day, things got worse. The humans began to attack the Volrath supply lines. Small teams appeared from nowhere, destroyed supply trucks, and disappeared into the tunnels. Food, water, and ammunition stopped reaching the front lines. Volrath soldiers began to run out of energy for their weapons. On the third day, the humans started targeting commanders. Thrall lost 7 senior officers in 12 hours. They were killed by bombs hidden in their command posts, by snipers shooting through walls, by humans who somehow knew exactly where they would be. The Volrath had intelligence networks. The humans had better ones. By the end of the third day, the ground invasion had lost 60% of its troops. The survivors were exhausted, terrified, and demoralized. They had never experienced fear before. Now they jumped at shadows. They shot at sounds. They began to see humans everywhere, even when no humans were there. Thrall demanded a report from his intelligence officer. "What are these creatures?" He roared. "How do they fight like this?" The officer's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. "I have been studying human history," he said. "They evolved on what they call a death world. Their planet is covered with dangerous animals, poisonous plants, and violent weather. Survival on their world required constant adaptation and aggression. So they are animals." "No, Commander. They are something far worse." The officer paused. "They have been perfecting the art of killing each other for over 10,000 years. They have fought wars that killed millions of their own kind. They have invented weapons capable of destroying entire cities in seconds. And they have used those weapons on themselves." Thrall was silent. "We are dealing with a species that has no limits," the officer continued. "They will use any tactic, any weapon, any strategy. They do not care about honor or rules. They care only about victory, and they will pay any price to achieve it." "Then we will pay a higher price," Thrall said. "Order the fleet to reinforce the ground troops." But the fleet had its own problems. Admiral Subin Cho had been waiting behind New Bizen's moon. Her fleet was smaller than the Volrath force. She had only 80 ships. But she had something the Volrath did not have: human creativity. Her ships did not approach in standard formations. They used the moon's gravity to accelerate to impossible speeds. They came at angles that Volrath targeting computers could not predict. They fired weapons that the Volrath had never seen before. And when things got desperate, her smaller ships rammed the Volrath carriers directly. The crews ejected at the last second, trusting their survival suits to keep them alive in space. The ships themselves became missiles, punching through Volrath armor and detonating inside enemy vessels. The Volrath commanders were horrified. No species had ever used such tactics. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was effective. By the end of the battle, Admiral Subin had lost 12 ships. The Volrath had lost 173. Thrall watched his fleet burn from his flagship. He had never known defeat. Now he understood why humans were so dangerous. They did not fight to survive. They fought to win. And they would destroy themselves if it meant destroying their enemies. The remaining Volrath forces retreated from New Bizen. They left behind 300,000 dead soldiers and 161 destroyed ships. The humans had lost 400 people. Colonel Dongwook watched the enemy flee. His face was tired but satisfied. "Send a message to Earth," he said. "Tell them New Bizen holds. Tell them the Volrath can bleed." The message spread across the galaxy. Species that had lived under Volrath rule for centuries heard the news. The invincible Dominion had been defeated by a species no one had heard of a year ago. Hope began to grow. And with hope came rebellion. The war had truly begun. 2 months after Nubizin, the galaxy was changing. News traveled fast between stars. The story of how 50,000 humans had defeated 500,000 Velra soldiers spread to every corner of known space. Species that had been conquered by the Dominion for centuries began to whisper a new word. Hope. Dr. Minji Kang was a scientist who studied alien cultures. She had spent 15 years learning about different species and their ways of life. Now she was stationed on the neutral world of Desser, a trading hub where dozens of species came together for commerce. Before the war, nobody had cared much about humans. They were a young species from a distant corner of the galaxy. They had little technology to trade, and few resources worth stealing. Most aliens considered them unimportant. Now, Minji could not walk through the streets without being stopped by curious aliens. "Please, human," a group of Kirithi diplomats asked her. "We must understand. How did your people defeat the Volrith?" The Kirithi were tall bird-like creatures with colorful feathers and sharp eyes. They had been conquered by the Volrith 300 years ago. Their warriors had fought bravely, but had been crushed in months. Minji tried to explain. "Human history is very violent," she said. "We have been fighting each other since before we developed writing. Wars are normal for us. We have spent thousands of years developing new ways to kill." The Kirithi leader tilted his head. "We also had wars. All species have wars. Yes, but human wars are different." Minji thought about how to explain this. "How long did your longest war last?" "The Great Feather War lasted for 7 years. It was devastating. 7 years." Minji nodded. "Humans had a war that lasted for 100 years. We have had religious wars that continued for generations. We have fought over land, over ideas, over pride. Sometimes we have fought simply because we forgot why we started fighting." The Kirithi were silent. "And we never gave up," Minji continued. "When our armies were destroyed, we made new armies. When our cities were burned, we built new cities. When our leaders were killed, we found new leaders. We are what scientists call persistence predators. Our ancient ancestors hunted by following prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We do not know how to stop." "That sounds terrifying," one of the Kirithi said quietly. "It is," Minji agreed. "Even to us." The news from Desser was not unique. Across the galaxy, aliens were asking the same questions. Human ambassadors and travelers found themselves suddenly popular. Everyone wanted to understand the species that had done the impossible, and not everyone just wanted to understand. Some wanted to learn. On the conquered world of Mahler, a rebellion was growing. Yimbu Beek had been a teacher before the war. He taught history to young students in a small human colony near Velrith territory. When the war started, his colony was evacuated, but he did not go with them. Instead, he went to Malar. The Malari were a peaceful species of small six-limbed creatures. They had been conquered by the Velrith 500 years ago. In all that time, they had never resisted. They had accepted their fate as slaves and servants. Hai and Wu changed that. "You do not need armies to fight," he told a group of Malari workers in a hidden basement. "You do not need weapons to resist. You need only the will to refuse." "But the Velrith will kill us," one Malari said. "They will destroy our families." "Perhaps, but they cannot kill all of you. There are billions of Malari on this world, and only thousands of Velrith occupiers. If every Malari refused to work, refused to obey, refused to cooperate, the Velrith could not function." He taught them small things at first. How to work slowly. How to make mistakes that look like accidents. How to lose important supplies. How to spread information without being caught. Then he taught them bigger things. How to sabotage machinery. How to disrupt communications. How to make weapons from everyday objects. The Malari had never thought of these things. Fighting was not in their nature. But desperation was a powerful teacher, and Hyunwoo was patient. Within weeks, the Velrith occupation on Mailer was in chaos. Equipment broke down constantly. Supply shipments disappeared. Velrith soldiers found themselves isolated and confused, unable to trust anything or anyone. And then the attacks began. Hyunwoo did not lead the attacks himself. He trained others to lead. Young Malari, who had grown up under Velrith rule and who burned with quiet anger, learned the arts of ambush and assassination. They struck at night, killing guards and vanishing before reinforcements arrived. The Velrith responded with brutality. They executed suspected rebels. They burned villages. They made examples of those who resisted. But instead of crushing the rebellion, their cruelty only made it stronger. Every Malari they kill creates 10 more rebels. Hyunwoo told his growing network of fighters. Every village they burn becomes a symbol of why we fight. The Velrith do not understand this. Violence breeds violence. They think fear will control us. Instead, fear is teaching us to hate. The Malari elder who had first listened to Hyunwoo watched the resistance grow. He was old, nearly at the end of his life. He had spent most of that life accepting Velrith rule as inevitable. Now he saw something different. The humans taught us something, he said to Hyunwoo one night. They showed us that giants can bleed. Hyunwoo shrugged. We have been killing giants for a long time. It is what we do. Back on Earth, Admiral Subin coordinated the growing resistance network across the galaxy. Human military advisors traveled to occupied worlds, teaching guerrilla tactics to species who had never resisted before. Weapons and supplies flowed through secret channels. Communications networks connected rebels across dozens of star systems. It was not just a war anymore. It was a revolution. The Velrith were not prepared for this. Their entire strategy was based on overwhelming force. They conquered worlds by destroying enemy armies and occupying enemy cities. They had never faced an enemy that refused to be conquered. Their forces were spread thin across their vast empire. Every planet required occupation troops. Every rebellion required reinforcements. Every victory required more resources. And the humans kept coming. Admiral Sabin's fleet struck at Velrith supply lines. Privateers attacked Velrith shipping. Special operations teams sabotaged Velrith bases. The Dominion was bleeding from 1,000 small wounds. Thrall, the Supreme Commander, who had been defeated at New Bizan, presented a report to the Velrith Council. In the 2 months since the war began, he said, we have lost 37 fleet groups. 112 worlds have risen in rebellion. Our supply lines are under constant attack. The council was stunned. The Velrith Dominion had not lost territory in over 1,000 years. Now they were losing it everywhere. How is this possible? One council member demanded. The humans are a small species. They have fewer ships than we do. They have less territory. They fight differently, Thrall explained. They do not seek to hold territory. They seek to cause chaos. They strike where we are weak and retreat before we can respond. They inspire other species to resist. They turn our conquered subjects against us. Then, we will crush them with overwhelming force. I tried that at New Bizan. I lost 60% of my ground troops and most of my fleet. The council was silent. They had no answer. Meanwhile, on Desser, Dr. Minji Kang received a new visitor. The Kirathi delegation had returned, but this time they did not ask questions. We have decided, the Kirathi leader said. Our people will join the resistance. We will fight alongside the humans. Are you sure? Minji asked. The Velrith will not be merciful. We have lived without mercy for 300 years. It is time to remember what we were before they conquered us. The Kirathi spread his wings. We were warriors once. Perhaps we can be warriors again. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Species that had been silent for centuries found their voices. Species that had been crushed found their strength. The Volrath had built their empire on fear. But now that fear was turning into anger, and at the center of it all stood humanity. Small, young, primitive by galactic standards, but unbreakable, unstoppable, and absolutely unwilling to surrender. The war had entered a new phase. It was no longer humans against Volrath. It was the galaxy rising against its oppressors, and the Volrath were beginning to realize that they had made a terrible mistake. 4 months into the war, the Volrath Dominion made a decision born of desperation. In the throne chamber of their homeworld, Supreme Commander Thrall stood before the Volrath Council. His crystalline body flickered with stress patterns that no Volrath had displayed in centuries. He was not afraid, not exactly, but he was deeply troubled. "The situation continues to deteriorate," he reported. 37 fleet groups destroyed. 112 worlds in rebellion. Our supply lines are being systematically cut by human privateers. The council listened in angry silence. These were beings who had known nothing but victory for over 1,000 years. Defeat was not something they understood. "The humans fight without honor," Thrall continued. "They appear from nowhere, strike, and vanish. They do not care about casualties. They do not care about rules. They turn our own subjects against us and teach them to fight in the same dishonorable way." One council member spoke up. "Then we must strike at their heart, destroy their homeworld, and their species." Thrall nodded slowly. "I have prepared such a plan. We call it the Extinction Fleet." He activated a holographic display. 12,000 warships appeared, arranged in massive battle formation. It was the largest fleet the Volrath had ever assembled. "The Extinction Fleet carries enough firepower to turn Earth's surface to molten glass," Thrall explained. "We will destroy their homeworld, their orbital stations, their moon colonies. We will leave nothing alive. Without Earth, the human resistance will collapse." The council approved the plan immediately. Within hours, the Extinction Fleet began to gather. But the humans were watching. Major Sujin Yoon received her mission briefing aboard a stealth vessel hidden in the corona of a dying star. The heat was intense, the radiation deadly, but the ship's shields held. No Volrath sensor could detect them here. Sujin was 41 years old, lean and quiet. She had served in special operations for 15 years. She had completed missions that did not officially exist against enemies that could never be named. She was very good at her job. 12,000 ships, her commander said, pointing at the holographic display. The largest fleet in Volrath history, all converging on Sol. Sujin studied the formation. "That is a lot of eggs in one basket." "We thought you might say that." The commander smiled grimly. "Operation Shattered Crown is authorized. Your team will infiltrate the Extinction Fleet's command ship and disable their coordination network." "Just disable it?" "We have something special prepared." The commander transferred a data file to Sujin's device. A virus designed specifically for Volrath systems. It will turn their fleet against itself. Sujin reviewed the file. The virus was elegant and vicious, designed to corrupt navigation systems and weapon targeting. When activated, the Volrath ships would not know where they were or what they were shooting at. "Who wrote this?" she asked. "A teenager from Seoul. Name is Yoonji Mo. She crashed the global banking system 3 years ago just to see if she could. We recruited her instead of prosecuting her." Sujin laughed. "Humans are strange. Yes, that is why we are winning." Sujin assembled her team. 12 operatives, each one a specialist. They included demolition experts, infiltration specialists, combat engineers, and hackers. They were the best of the best, chosen from military forces around the world. Their insertion was almost impossible. The extinction fleet was gathered at a massive supply depot, protected by layers of defensive systems and patrol vessels. Any normal approach would be detected and destroyed. But Sujin's team was not normal. They traveled in a captured Velrith cargo vessel, its identification code stolen from a raided convoy. They wore Velrith disguises, their bodies covered in synthetic material that looked like crystalline Velrith skin. They spoke Velrith language, learned from captured prisoners and intercepted communications. The cargo vessel docked at the supply depot without incident. The Velrith guards checked their credentials and found nothing wrong. The team unloaded their cargo and disappeared into the station's maintenance tunnels. Phase 1 complete, Sujin reported over encrypted radio. Moving to Phase 2. The command ship was the largest vessel in the extinction fleet. It was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and protected by the best security the Velrith had ever developed. But the Velrith had designed their security against Velrith threats. They had never considered human creativity. Sujin's team did not try to break through the main defenses. Instead, they found a waste disposal system that led directly to the ship's engineering section. It was disgusting, dangerous, and completely unguarded. Humans are willing to crawl through sewage to kill their enemies, Sujin muttered as they made their way through the pipes. The Velrith would never consider this. That is why we will win. They emerged in a storage room deep inside the command ship. From there, they split into 3 groups. One group would create a distraction. One group would secure an escape route. Sujin's group would upload the virus. The distraction came first. Explosions ripped through the ship's lower decks, killing dozens of Velrith and creating chaos. Alarms blared. Security teams rushed to contain the damage. While they were distracted, Sujin's group moved through the ship like ghosts. They killed silently when necessary, using weapons that made no sound and left no trace. They reached the main computer core in less than 15 minutes. Uploading now, Sujin said. The virus slid into the Velrith system like poison into water. It spread through the ship's network, then out to the fleet coordination system, then to every ship connected to that system. 12,000 ships, all infected. Upload complete, Sujin reported. Extraction in progress. The escape was more difficult than the infiltration. The Velrith had realized something was wrong. Security teams were searching everywhere. But Sujin's team had planned for this too. They fought their way to the docking bay, leaving a trail of dead Velrith behind them. They reached their escape shuttle with only seconds to spare. As they launched into space, the command ship's weapons tried to track them. But the virus was already working. The weapons locked onto the wrong target. They fired at a nearby Velrith cruiser instead of the escaping shuttle. The cruiser exploded. Other ships, confused by corrupted targeting data, began to fire at each other. Chaos spread through the extinction fleet like fire through dry wood. When the fleet tried to jump towards Sol, their navigation system scattered them across 17 different star systems. Ships that were supposed to arrive together arrived separately, light years apart. Communications failed. Command structure collapsed. Thrall watched the disaster unfold from his command center. His crystalline body flickered with colors that represented pure fury. How is this possible? He roared. How did they do this? His intelligence officer had no answers. The virus had covered its tracks too well. They would spend weeks trying to understand what had happened. Meanwhile, Admiral Subin Cho was waiting. Earth's defense fleet had gathered in solar orbit. 80 ships, supported by orbital defense platforms and ground-based missile systems. Compared to 12,000 Velrith warships, it was nothing. But the 12,000 ships never arrived together. They arrived in fragments. A few hundred here, a few hundred there. scattered and confused, their weapons malfunctioning, their communications disrupted. And Subin destroyed them piece by piece. "All ships, engage," she ordered calmly. "Target priority. Command vessels first. Let none escape." The battle was not really a battle. It was an execution. Human ships surrounded each scattered Velroth group and hammered them until nothing was left. Velroth vessels tried to retreat, but their navigation systems sent them in wrong directions. They tried to fight back, but their weapons hit their own allies. 2/3 of the extinction fleet surrendered within hours. They had never surrendered before, but they had never faced anything like this before either. The remaining third was destroyed. Admiral Subin broadcast a message on all channels. The extinction fleet is no more. The Sol system is secure. Any Velroth vessel that enters human space will be destroyed without warning. The message spread across the galaxy. Species that had been holding their breath, waiting to see if humanity would survive, now celebrated. The invincible Velroth had been crushed. On Earth, people poured into the streets. They had faced extinction and survived. They had looked into the darkness, and the darkness had blinked. Major Sujin Yoon watched the celebrations from a hospital bed. She had been wounded during the extraction, a Velroth blade cutting deep into her leg. But she was smiling. "We did it," she said to the young hacker Yoonji Mo, who had come to visit her. "Your virus worked perfectly." Yoonji shrugged. She was 18 years old, small and quiet, with dark circles under her eyes from too many nights staring at computer screens. It was not that difficult. Velroth computer systems are very logical. Logical systems are easy to break. And illogical systems? Yoonji grinned. Human systems are illogical. That is why nobody can hack us properly. We do not even understand our own systems. Sujin laughed despite the pain in her leg. That might be the most human thing anyone has ever said. The war was not over. The Velroth Dominion still existed. But their greatest weapon had been destroyed, and their confidence had been shattered. Now it was time for the final phase. 1 year after the Velroth declared war on humanity, the Galactic Assembly Hall was filled once again. But this time, everything was different. The Velroth Dominion had collapsed. Not just from military defeat, though that had been complete and devastating. Their entire empire had crumbled from within. Species that had been conquered for centuries had risen up. Worlds that had been silent had found their voices. The fear that had held the Dominion together had been replaced by hope, and hope was far more powerful than fear. Ambassador Una Park stood at the speaking platform, the same place where she had accepted the Velroth declaration of war 1 year ago. She was a little grayer now, a little more tired, but her eyes were still calm and clear. Around her sat representatives from dozens of species. The Kirathi, with their colorful feathers and sharp eyes. The Malari, small and six-limbed, who had learned to fight under human guidance. A dozen others, who had thrown off their chains, and in the audience, sitting quietly, was former Supreme Commander Thrall. He had surrendered 3 months ago, after the last Velroth stronghold fell. The human forces had offered him a choice: trial for war crimes, or asylum on Earth in exchange for his knowledge. He had chosen asylum. He still did not understand why the humans had offered it. "You fought well," Admiral Subin had told him. "In our culture, that earns respect. Besides, you have information that could prevent future wars." Thrall did not understand humans. He suspected he never would die. Now he watched as Ambassador Una addressed the assembly. 1 year ago, she said, the Velroth believed humanity would be an easy conquest. They based this belief on our small territory, our young civilization, our apparent primitiveness. She paused, and that same calm smile crossed her face. They did not understand what they were dealing with. The assembly was silent. listening intently. Humanity did not evolve on a paradise world. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. We survived ice ages that froze our ancestors solid. We survived diseases that killed millions. We survived predators that hunted us in the night. And we survived each other. She looked around the hall. For 10,000 years, humans have been fighting. We fought over land. We fought over resources. We fought over ideas. Sometimes we fought for reasons that made no sense at all. But we never stopped fighting. And we never learned how to give up. The Kirathi leader nodded slowly. He understood now. His species had been warriors once, before the Varith crushed them. Perhaps they could be warriors again. The Varith thought that war was about numbers, Yuna continued. About ships and soldiers and firepower. They were wrong. War is about will. War is about determination. War is about refusing to stop even when everything seems hopeless. She pointed at the assembled representatives. You have all learned this lesson. You have all discovered what you are capable of when you refuse to accept defeat. The Velrith conquered you because you believed you could be conquered. Now you know the truth. No species can be conquered unless it consents to be conquered. The Malari representative made a sound that might have been agreement. His people had gone from slaves to fighters in less than a year. They would never go back. Humanity is not a conquering species, Yuna said. We have no desire for empire. We have enough trouble managing our own world. But we are survivors. We have always been survivors. And we will help any species that wants to survive. She looked directly at Threll. The Varith learned this lesson the hard way. Let that lesson be the last one the galaxy needs on this subject. After the formal proceedings ended, the assembly hall became a place of celebration and negotiation. Species that had never spoken before now discussed trade and alliances. Former enemies became cautious friends. A new order was being born. Taiho Kim, now Ambassador Yuna's senior advisor, found himself surrounded by young Kirathi diplomats. Is it true, one asked, that humans have a saying about war? Something about awakening sleeping giants? Taiho nodded. He had grown much in the past year. He was no longer the nervous young officer who had watched Yuna accept the declaration of war. He had seen battle. He had seen victory. He had seen what humans could do when they were truly pushed. Admiral Yamamoto, he said. After Pearl Harbor, he said, I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve. The Kirithi tilted their heads. And this Yamamoto, he was correct. He was. His side lost the war. The Kirithi exchanged glances. It seems that humanity's enemies have been learning the same lesson throughout your history. Taiho smiled. You would think they would understand eventually. They never do. On the observation deck of the station, Admiral Subin stood with Dr. Minji and Colonel Dongwook. They watched the stars in comfortable silence. Dongwook had been promoted after New Bizon. He had also refused 3 offers to retire with honors. I am not done yet, he had said. There is still work to be done. Minji had become one of the most famous humans in the galaxy. Her explanations of human nature had been translated into 100 languages. Species that had never understood why humans were so dangerous now had at least some understanding. Subin had led the final assault on the Volrath homeworld. It had been almost anticlimactic. The Volrath fleet was destroyed, their army scattered, their leadership in chaos. They had surrendered after 3 days of fighting. What happens now? Minji asked. Now we help rebuild, Subin said. We establish trade routes. We create alliances. We try to make sure this never happens again. And if it does? Dongwook asked. Subin's expression hardened for a moment, then softened. Then we do what we have always done. We adapt. We endure. We win. She turned to face them both. We are human. It is what we do. Below them, the first joint fleet of the new Galactic Alliance departed for peacekeeping duties. Human ships flew alongside Kirathi and Malari vessels. Their crews were learning to work together, learning to trust each other. It was not easy. Species that had been enemies for centuries did not become friends overnight. Old hatreds died slowly. Old fears lingered, but hope was stronger than fear. Humans had proven that. Thrall stood alone in a corner of the observation deck. He had not spoken to anyone all day. He was thinking about what had happened, trying to understand where the Velrith had gone wrong. Una Park approached him quietly. "You seem troubled," she said. "I am trying to understand," Thrall replied. "We have more ships, more soldiers, more resources. We should have won, but you did not." "No." Thrall's crystalline form flickered with frustration. "How? How did you defeat us?" Una considered the question carefully. "You fought to conquer," she said finally. "We fought to survive. There's a difference. A conqueror can accept defeat and try again later. A survivor cannot. For us, there was no later. There was only victory or death. We could have destroyed you. Yes, but you could not have conquered us. We would have kept fighting. Every colony, every ship, every individual human would have fought until they were dead. And we would have taken as many of you with us as possible." Thrall was silent for a long moment. "That is terrifying." "Yes," Una agreed. "It is, but it is also who we are. We cannot change our nature any more than you can change yours." She looked out at the stars. The Velrith built their empire on fear. But fear is a weak foundation. Eventually, the feared become the fearless. Eventually, the conquered remember that they were once free. You built your power on the weakness of others. We built ours on our own strength. Thrall had no response to that. Why Una turned to leave, then stopped. "You asked for asylum on Earth," she said. "Why?" "Because I wanted to understand. I have spent my entire life commanding armies and conquering worlds. Now I must learn something new." He paused. "I want to learn how to build instead of destroy." Una smiled. It was the same calm smile she had worn when she accepted the declaration of war. But now it held something else. Warmth, perhaps, or hope. "Then you may find that you have more in common with humans than you thought," she said. "We have destroyed many things in our history, but we have built even more. Perhaps that is the most human thing of all, the desire to create something that will last." She walked away, leaving Thrall alone with his thoughts. The galaxy had changed. The balance of power had shifted. Old empires had fallen, and new alliances had risen in their place. And at the center of it all stood a small species from an unremarkable world. They had proven, once again, that underestimating humanity was the most dangerous mistake any civilization could make. The war was over, but the story of humanity was just beginning.